You're probably not bad with girls. You just make it nearly impossible for anyone to actually read you, and you don't even realize you're doing it. Most guys think the problem is confidence or looks or not knowing the right thing to say. It's usually none of that. The real problem is you're never actually clear about anything. You hint instead of say it. You joke instead of admit it. You wait for her to make the first obvious move, so if it goes wrong, you never technically put yourself out there at all, and then you wonder why nothing ever actually goes anywhere. The advice you've probably heard doesn't actually fix this either. Just be confident. Just be yourself. That advice is so vague, it's basically useless because it doesn't tell you what to actually do differently. You can feel confident internally and still send completely mixed signals externally, because the problem was never really about how you feel. It's about whether the other person can actually tell what you mean. And feeling confident doesn't automatically make you clear. Here's what's actually happening underneath all of that. You're scared of being obvious, because obvious means it can be rejected clearly in a way you can't explain away later. So instead you stay vague on purpose, a little flirty but deniable, a little interested but never enough that it counts as trying. It feels safer because if she doesn't respond the way you want, you can tell yourself you weren't really trying anyway. But from her side, all that vagueness doesn't read as mysterious. It reads as uninterested, or worse, unpredictable, and most people don't stick around long enough to decode someone who won't just say what they mean. Think about how this actually shows up. You text something, then immediately worry it sounded too eager, so you wait an hour before sending the next one, timing it so you don't look too invested. You joke your way out of a real compliment because saying it straight feels too exposed. You notice she responded fast, so now you're overthinking whether you should slow down your own reply to match some imaginary rule book nobody agreed to. Or you plan to ask her to hang out, then quietly downgrade it into a group thing at the last second. So if she says no, it wasn't really about you specifically. None of that is actual strategy, it's just fear. I used to think staying vague made me more interesting, like keeping her guessing was some kind of skill. Really, I was just avoiding the risks of ever being obvious about anything, because obvious things can be turned down and vague things can always be explained away as a misunderstanding later. It took a while to realize that the guys who actually get somewhere aren't the ones playing it safe. They're just the ones willing to say the mildly embarrassing direct thing out loud while everyone else is still calculating the optimal delay before texting back. This isn't about swinging the other way and being blunt to the point of pressure either. Nobody wants someone announcing their feelings 5 minutes after meeting them, or treating directness like an excuse to ignore how the other person's actually responding. There's a real difference between being clear and being pushy, and mixing those two up is exactly why some guys here just be direct and take it as permission to ignore an obvious no. The point isn't intensity, it's just removing the guesswork, saying the thing plainly instead of hoping she picks up on the 15 tiny signals you think you're sending, because most of the time she isn't picking up on any of them. She's just experiencing you as someone who's hard to read, which isn't intriguing, it's just exhausting. Being clear is actually the harder option, not the easier one, because clear means you can be rejected in a way you can't spin later, but it's also the only version that actually works, because clarity is the thing that lets someone else feel safe enough to be clear back. Vague people attract vague responses. Direct, low-pressure honesty is rare enough now that it actually stands out, not because it's some trick, but because almost nobody's doing it anymore. So the next time you're deciding whether to say the actual thing or the safer, vaguer version of it, notice that you're making a choice, not just being naturally mysterious. You're choosing the version where you can't really lose because you never really tried, and that version doesn't feel like rejection when it fails. It just quietly goes nowhere over and over, and you never quite figure out why.